So I'm going to be looking at three DC finest that I picked up this week, or this week and end of last week. Two, no particular order. First one up is DC finest Batman: A Death in the Family. So this covers not much at all, but it's under 640 pages. August 1988 to December 1988. So this obviously contains the Batman comic and the detective comic, but it also contains the Cult 4-issue series by Bernie Wrightson and Jim Starlin. And it says it also contains Batman: A Death in the Family. So that was the iconic series where readers could vote if Jason Todd lives or dies. And is it a spoiler? It's been 40 years-ish, 38 years. He dies. So as you can see here, they're included in that. So the predominant writers and talent on here, excluding the Cult series, is I think it is Jim Starlin and Jim Starlin and John Wagner, Alan Grant on Detective. And the predominant artist, again excluding that miniseries, is Norm Breyfogle for the Detective. And the main artist on the Batman title is Jim Aparo, but there is some guest artists. The Jim Aparo stuff, fantastic. But I will admit, some of the other artists on the main Batman title aren't that great. They've dated quite badly. When you think about it, and the thing is, I think the problem is you forget how long ago the 80s were. But yes, so some of the artists aren't that good, but then you have some wonderful non Breyfogle stuff. It also includes some annuals as well. One of the annuals is written by Denny O'Neil, so great writer, and Klaus Janson on art. Unusually, Klaus Janson, I think, is doing. Says Klaus Janson and Tony DeZuniga. So I think Klaus Janson is doing the pencils this time, which is unusual. He's normally the inker. So I'm sure I've read this because I've collected Batman in different versions for nearly all my life. And the Question guest stars in the annual. Big Sage, so the OG Question. This was an iconic cover. Wonderful McFarlane cover. But then you have Dave Cockrum doing the artwork. It's okay, but it's a bit different in style. And then we move back on to Norm Breyfogle. Norm Breyfogle was one of the definitive Batman artists, up there with Jim Aparo, Neil Adams, and that lot. Let's just see if we can find more Breyfogle. I did used to like that cover. More Breyfogle goodness with Alan Grant and John Wagner again. It's weird how Alan Grant made a name for himself in American comics, but John Wagner just kind of went, yeah, whatever, and moved back just doing predominantly Judge Dredd and 2000 AD strips. So from there, we move on to the Cults, which I do have in book form. So I will get rid of the book because I don't believe in keeping two copies of the same thing. And then this is where Batman gets good because you have the wonderful Jim Aparo and the Death in the Family storyline. That was a weird story because somehow the Joker became the ambassador for a country. And then it rounds off with more Breyfogle artwork. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, chunky. I've still got to read the Red Skies DC Finest, so that's a bit further down my list on what DC Finest to read. One that is on my near the top of my list is DC Finest Western, The Hangman Never Loses. This says, written and drawn by classic creators, these are the stories that transform the DC universe forever. DC Finest Western, The Hangman Never Loses, features these incredible issues and more. This covers the years 1976 to 1973. It says, journey back to the Old West, where fast wits and a fast draw were the only way to survive, and follow heroes like Hawk, El Diablo, and more as they try to bring some semblance of justice to the lawless frontier. In this anthology volume, Hawk Hawkins, that just made me laugh, son of Tomahawk, continues his father's legacy of keeping the fragile peace between Native Americans and white settlers. Joining him is Firehair, an orphan raised by Native Americans who struggles for acceptance between the world he came from and the culture he was raised in. And for those who dare to commit crimes against the innocent, beware that the devil himself, El Diablo, doesn't come for you on his black steed. So it includes talent like Robert Kanigher, John Albano, Gil Kane, Joe Kubert, Tony DeZuniga, and others. Collects All-Star Western 1 to 11, Super DC Giant 5 to 14, no, Super DC Giants 14, 15, 22, Tomahawk 130 to 140, Weird Western Tales 12 to 17, all published between August 1970 and April 1973. There's just shy of 600 pages. It's gorgeous. The artwork is gorgeous. Jonah Hex makes an appearance in some strips as well. DC do fantastic Western stories. Just show you one more. So we have some Jonah Hex goodness. So yeah, really looking forward to reading that. And another one I'm looking forward to reading is Dead Man, How Many Times Can a Guy Die? The predominant creative teams on this are Arnold Drake, who did the Doom Patrol, and Jack Miller, and artwork by Neil Adams on a lot of the book. It says Boston Brand. That's the back covers back. That's some of the covers of the issues. It says Boston Brand was the world's greatest acrobat until an assassin's bullet cut his act and his life short. However, instead of passing over to the afterlife, Boston was given a chance by the goddess Ramakrishna to remain on Earth and catch his killer. On the earthly plane, Boston can't be seen or heard by the living, but he can possess them in order to carry out his pursuit of justice. He now exists as a literal dead man, destined to roam the world until his killer is caught. He was created by Arnold Drake and he was brought to life by pencil Carmine Infantino, so he was the original artist on him. Deadman blended elements of horror, mystery, and action in a comic like no other title. He eventually became closely associated with artist Neil Adams, who added his own masterful touch to Boston's tragic quest for a tonal piece. So this includes issues of Strange Adventures, which was like the title which featured Dead Man, Brave and the Bold, a number of issues, Challenges of the Unknown, Justice League of America, The Forever People, World's Finest Comics, and The Phantom Stranger, and Superman Family, and Aquaman. So some unusual ones in there as well as the more standard ones. So yeah, the first issue. There's about 570 pages. Yeah, so the first story is illustrated by Carmine Infantino, who rose into prominence and fame when he had that lengthy run on Flash. But I just want to look for some. Is this him? Yep. And then we get some wonderful Neil Adams goodness. This is where the strip really takes off. And this was the big selling point for me. If I see Neil Adams, Jim Aparo, Gil Kane, or Gene Colan, I'm guaranteed to give a comic a try. Nobody does punching like Neil Adams. Sounds a bit strange, but you know, you get what I'm trying to say. So he has quite a lengthy run in here. Wonderful cover that. He has quite a lengthy run in here. So savour that. That's wonderful. Because then some of the later issues were Deadman wasn't the main character. That's when the art becomes, shall we say, interesting. But like I said, there's a load of Neil Adams stuff. Then we have one, which is a weird one. This is George Tusker doing the main art, who's a good artist in himself. And Neil Adams does some of the other pages. And they're very different artists, and the styles don't really gel that well. And the Justice League of America, number 94. Again, Neil Adams does 4 pages, but the rest is done by Dick Dillon, who it just doesn't. I mean, look at these two contrasting pages. Adams on this side, and then Dick Dillon on that one. Not two artists that complement each other very well. And then we have the Forever People ones. I must have skipped these two because I've got them in my Jack Kirby Fourth World Omnibus. And then there's some team ups with Dick Dillon again on artwork, so I won't show you that. It's same old, same old. Is this? What's weird about in the late 60s, Jim Aparo and Neil Adams had a very similar style, so I just want to check who did Batman and Deadman. Because I think it's Jim Aparo. Yeah, Jim Aparo. But you'll see what I'm referring to about the styles being very similar back in those days before Jim Aparo went a more cartoony brushwork with his style. He had more like an Eisner kind of sweep to his brushwork later on. And then this is just shocking. Atrocious. So, like I said, the majority is great. Some of it is just forgettable fluff. And then there's a great issue of the Phantom Stranger with early Mike Grell artwork. Fred Carrillo's a really nice artist. I don't know much about him, but I do like his work in here. So there's one. The final story is shockingly bad, though. Again, there's another Aparo one, which is wonderful. But then there's the Superman family one. I think Geeko Hog will like this because it's very Lois Lane heavy, very Lois Lane centric, but it just doesn't go. It feels really too sunshiny compared to the rest of the stories. But yeah, I love Deadman. He's one of my favourites, and I hope. So the next one that they do, it should include the series that Jorge Luis Garcia Lopez did. I think it was with Andy Helfer writing, and then there's some of us. There's been a lot of other series for Deadman. There was a really good Mike Baron, who I don't like now because he's gone very extreme right wing, but he was a good writer back in the day. I did some great run of Deadman prestige formats with Kelly Jones, yeah. So yeah, pleased about that. The next one that I am hoping to get is there's a few. Oh, I want to get the Sergeant Rock one, and there's a second Flash one. What I'm tempted with, but Sergeant Rock is the next on my must-buy list, and of course Green Arrow Volume 2 as well. So still really good value. Still $39.99, which is at least $10 cheaper than Epic Collections, and you get at least 200 pages more than an Epic Collection. So DC, they know what people want. They want good value for money. They want, and this is what this gives. So hope you enjoyed that, and I do recommend diving into a DC Finest. A really good value for what you get. It's one of the best offers around. Okay, bye.